I spent 2 weeks in Paris this September, and I thought I would share with you some tips that I found when I was there. Now, the first one is to use Google Maps. I printed off some maps, and it helped for me plotting where I wanted to go and sort of the order to visit them in, but it did not help me in actually navigating the city. You'll get to a point, and there'll be like 6 streets, and you don't know which one is straight. So even with Google Maps, I still got myself turned around, but my tip is you need to use Google Maps to figure out how to get around Paris. Next off is your room may not have USB chargers. I stay in a lot of rooms in North America and we're just so accustomed to it, but my room in Paris did not have a USB charger. Now I had brought all my different I had a USB charger with the right plugs, and I found that for whatever reason, it didn't work in the wall. I brought one of those things to use my North American plugs in, but the distance between the wall and the plugs were so thin that it actually didn't fit into the sockets. So I ended up charging everything off my computer, and luckily that worked for me. But so just be aware that some of your plugs and your converters you might be bringing may not work. And even when I got to Disneyland, there was USB plugs, but then I had problems plugging things into the walls. It kept falling out. There was probably a step I didn't know I had to do. So just have some backup choices for when you're dealing with your USB plugs. Next, I would recommend going on like a big bus tour when you first arrive, because this way you can see all the sights. You can just sit there and within a couple hours you've done the city, you've seen the sights. And for me, the sights wasn't the main reason I was going to Paris. I wanted to explore, but you sort of felt like, oh, I haven't seen the Eiffel Tower yet. So by taking the big bus tour on the first day, you see all those sights, and then you can relax into your vacation and focus on what you want to do each day without thinking you still haven't seen the sights. Next, tipping at restaurants isn't necessary. All the tips and gratuities are already built into the prices. So the taxes and the gratuities. So we're so accustomed in North America tipping that you do not need to tip. Now, of course, you're welcome to tip, but it isn't expected of you. The same thing goes with your purchases. All the taxes are built in the prices of your purchases. Now, if you're from North America and you spend more than something like $150 to $160 in one store, you're eligible to get taxes back. You have to have your passport with you, and they will do all the paperwork for you. And then when you go to the airport, you have to scan it. And for me, I just had the money put back onto my credit card. So just be aware, if you're making any large purchases, you are eligible to get some tax back. And you can ask when you at the store. Now, in France, you need a health pass. Now, when I spoke to some Americans, they said that their CDC card didn't work, and there are tents everywhere, and you can get an allergen test, and that will, with a negative allergen test, you get a 3-day health pass, and then you have to continue to do it. However, because I'm from Canada, I had my health papers, and they are in French, and just by showing them that, and then seeing in French it says you have received 2 doses, I was able to get in everywhere with my Ontario health papers, and I didn't need to get an allergen test to get their health pass. I went to museums and restaurants, transportation, everything, and nobody stopped me. Now, almost every meal I ate was so large that I only ate half of. So if I was traveling by myself, so I couldn't share with anybody, but if you are traveling with family, you may want to consider sharing meals, and then that allows you to try more things later if you're hungry, because there's so much different food to eat in Paris. So just consider that, because all the meals I had were really big. Now, in North America, we're big on air conditioning at hotels, whereas in France and probably more of Europe, they just open their windows. But the strange things for us is that there's no screens on the windows. All the windows are just open. And so I was concerned about bugs coming in. And at one point I faced an area where there were a lot of birds, like sort of a back sort of courtyard area. and I was afraid that the birds might fly in. And so for us that are used to having screens on the windows, they don't have screens. And so it's just something to consider. There was air conditioning in the room, and it was okay, but just something to think about because we're not used to. Now, I took public transit a lot, so I just want to share some tips for riding the bus. You want to find your bus stand, and each little area will have the bus numbers and the schedules listed there. Now, not every bus that drives by is going to stop there, so you want to make sure that you're on at the right stop. And to do so, we're back to Google Maps. I use that to figure out my journeys every single time, and a lot of times I chose to go the easiest route versus the fastest route. So I was able to take one bus from my hotel to almost everywhere I went, which I was thankful for. I did sometimes take the metro, but I very seldom had to switch. So if you're not used to taking transit, you might want to take the easiest route, even if it's going to be 5 or 10 minutes slower. And then when you get on, I use tickets, and you put your ticket in, and then it comes back out, and you just hold on to it. Now, if you are going to be riding the metro, again, you need your ticket, and you put it in, and you take it out, and you hold on to it, because you will need that at most stations to exit. You put it back in again. So hopefully these tips will help you out the next time you are in Paris.